Anybody out there sick of cooking? I usually love to cook. And when the pandemic began almost a year ago, I was way into it. I was concocting extravagant meals, trying new recipes, pulling out some of my favorites from the olden days when I ran a kitchen in a Chicago restaurant. I was delighting in setting the table and displaying dishes with a voila. Felt very creative and satisfying. Now, 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days later, I am sick of cooking. So, a few nights ago, when I was craving something good to eat, something both nourishing and delicious, satisfying and healthy, interesting and just seriously yummy, I wished someone would magically appear and make it for me. I looked around the house. Huh, nobody there. Now, in my husband Tim's defense, I have to say he has been cooking, baking even, but he wasn't in the cooking mode that late afternoon. So I started poking around the kitchen, looking in the refrigerator, and I started pulling things out. And as I gathered ingredients, I began to feel inspired, thinking, oh, well, I could add this, and what about that? And oh, we have this too. And about an hour later, I had created a pretty great meal. It wasn't done with a lot of fanfare, but it was pretty close to what I had been dreaming about. Seriously yummy. It's like that with so many things. You do have to make them happen. The pandemic has added layers of confusion, depression, absent-mindedness, foggy brain, anxiety, discouragement, and real fear to our lives. And making things happen sometimes feels impossible. And I do believe there is a time for rest and a time for action. And taking care of oneself is of utmost importance. So a big helping of forgiveness is a good ingredient to have on hand these days too. But I do think it's the way with our community at UUCCI. There are so many efforts required to make it happen, so many ingredients that go into it. And sometimes we just want others to do the cooking for us. And just to take this metaphor and stretch it some more, every person adds a unique flavor, a unique spice. So if you want to eat, you got to get off the couch and cook. And if you want to eat well, you have to dig a little deeper for ingredients and make it so. And for the beautiful dish that is our community, we all have to add what we can, sometimes making ourselves do it. The result is seriously yummy. So let us ponder beloved community this morning and some of the ingredients that make it so.
Okay, so it's that time again, and I just opening up my my Wonder card, and oh, it's a recipe. Oh, how timely! Wow, Jan, we're killing it with these themes. Really running it into the ground. It's a recipe. Now, I want to talk a little bit about recipes. We're talking about it throughout this morning, and I have a bit of a confession to make. So I hope this is a safe space. I'm just going to look around. No one's shaking their heads like, don't do it. I'm really bad at following recipes. I am what you might call an experimental creative type. And I think case in point is if you ever want me to cook you eggs, okay? Now eggs, if you're a breakfast type like my wife is or my daughter is, don't need to be too complicated, right? You get some sort of oil, you get some egg, and possibly some salt or some kind of small little spice on top. Maybe a sprinkle a little cheese. No need to go much further than that. Well, it's just a little harder for me to stop sometimes. And I don't know if this has ever happened for you, and maybe soup imagery is a little better than eggs, but sometimes you just feel like it needs something, And so for me, sometimes I'll add um, some basil, right? And I'll start doing that, and I'll say, oh, you know what? It needs something else, and then I'll put something else in it, like I don't know, like some black pepper or something. And then I'm saying, oh, it's just not right. And after a while, I keep adding things, and then it's like, where are the eggs underneath this pile of sesame seeds and sauerkraut and mayonnaise? It's like, this is creative, Daddy. Really good job, Holly says. So sometimes I need to step back and try to keep it a little simple and try to just kind of go with it. Now, sometimes I will try to use a recipe. And I'll be working through it and feeling like I'm following the rules, following the process. And then all of a sudden, I'll realize I missed a step. And at that point, it feels a little hard to recover. And so I try to adapt. And I know it's not perfect, but I try to adapt and do the best, to the best of my ability, follow the rest of the recipe. And sometimes it works out pretty well. And sometimes I know that it's a little off. But sometimes it still tastes good. And now the last kinds of recipes I do and is times where the food may taste really good. It may be a little hit or miss, but the joy is in the process of the cooking itself. It's in finding the ingredients, gathering the ingredients, thinking about what you're wanting to do, either for yourself or for a loved one. And it's in that process of creating something that will nourish that the joy can be found. Sometimes when we're longing just for the result, just for that perfect breakfast set of eggs, and we miss the opportunity to kind of feel the egg crack or to watch the egg drop and to listen to that energy transforming into energy that can nourish my body. And that's true with any food we might prepare. Do we miss the opportunity to watch the formation and the transformation of our ingredients into this thing we hope to partake in? So I try to slow down, and even in my creativity, not lose that experimental style, but even in my creativity, honor the intentions of what I'm doing. So that when I get to those tastes or glimpses of deliciousness or creativity, I can be grateful to be a part of it. And I'm so grateful that this is a place where we concoct and think up new recipes and cook together a lot and share food. I hope that in this hour to come and in this weeks and months to come, we find more opportunities to break a few eggs, to add a little spice, and hopefully to sit around the table and partake. May it be so. And amen. Can you hear my dog? I think you can.
It is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. Through your struggles, someone nurtured you into being, instilling a belief in a shared purpose, a common yet precious resource. that belongs to all of us when we share. And so you began seeking a beloved community, a people that does not put fences around love, a community that holds its arms open to the possibilities of love, a heart home to nourish your soul and share your gifts.
Our second reading is actually written by all of you who attended last week. It is a love letter to UUCCI. We say we care when we walk our dogs, walk ourselves, walk in nature, and breathe deeply in our Indiana woods. We say we care by curling up with a good book, setting aside time for quiet, gazing at the nighttime sky, and when we give the wind time to speak. We care by cooking healthy foods for ourselves, making chicken teriyaki for our family, preparing hot meals for those in need, and donating to local food banks. We bake our love into chocolate chip cookies, buttermilk biscuits, and cream cheese Danish. We show kindness when we write loving cards and send notes of gratitude, create family scrapbooks, phone our friends, and greet a stranger on the street. We show kindness when we recycle and plant trees, feed the birds, tend a garden, and clean up the rivers, parks, and roadsides. We display love by serving in our community, donating to worthy causes, and when we stand up against social injustice. We love by being fully present with each other. We love when we are patient, forgiving, and when we listen, and listen. When we inhale peace and exhale love, our beloved community thrives. When we inhale peace and exhale love, our beloved community thrives. Breathe with me, friends. Breathe in the peace that surrounds us in this precious moment. No matter what awaits us beyond this moment, let us savor it together by breathing together. Breathe in peace. And as you exhale, breathe out love. Breathe in peace and breathe out love. Breathe in peace. Breathe out love. Peace and love. Peace and love. I believe it's true. I believe that when we inhale peace and exhale love, our beloved community is not only present to us, but it thrives. It thrives when we inhale and exhale those gifts received and given, given and received of peace and love. And while I believe this, I also don't think it's always just that easy. Or rather, perhaps it is easy to experience a sense of the beloved community, but perhaps much, much more difficult to sustain it, to sustain that feeling, that view, that connection. The subtitle for this sermon is a bit of a disclaimer, namely that over the next several minutes, I will offer an imprecise recipe for the beloved community. I say this knowing perfectly well that you by now have been warned about what I am like in the kitchen. A little experimental, a little intuitive, if you will. So bear with me as I offer a few insights on some of the ingredients I believe are present in this ongoing community endeavor. And in case you're worried, I will let you know that I have not come empty-handed, nor empty-hearted for that matter. I come with a full heart, thinking about this beautiful poem we wrote together last week that Lori helped to mix together, whisk together. A love letter to UUCCI is a letter from us to us, and to all those we love, we know, and those we long to support and fight for in this life. Beyond these walls, within this space, wherever we go, this love letter to UUCCI feels a bit like a starter. Not like a sourdough starter, but let's call it a sweet dough starter. Is that a thing? I don't know. Let's run with it carefully. Of course, our poem is a little sweet dough starter for this beloved community we are trying to help rise and take shape in our lives together. So let's see what we find inside and see if we can work backwards to find a little pinch of this and a little dash of that for our beloved community. Okay, well, one thing right off the bat, the metaphor of cooking itself holds a lot of meaning for this crowd. I mean, we love to eat, and we love to eat together. Seriously, when I first came here just over 4 years ago, just a couple extra days, 4 years ago, Hattie and I were driven out to what felt like the middle of nowhere. We were here for the ministerial search committee, and I was sort of a potential next minister candidate, pre-candidate. And so that first night we went out and it felt like the middle of nowhere, but which ended up instead being the lovely home of Liz and Michael Graven. Liz, being on the search committee, was hosting a pitch-in dinner. Pitch-in. That's the first and not the last time I heard that term. And Michael, oh, who knows where he was, but appropriately so, he was out for the evening. So the search committee and I could get to know each other more. And I have to imagine that Hattie and I ate better than Michael did that night because the ministerial search committee came through. They delivered. They brought delicious food to that middle of nowhere oasis in southwestern Bartholomew County. And it was from that evening on that I knew that you all loved to eat delicious food together. And that last word is really important. Together. You love to eat together, cook together, share food together, and have delicious conversations around the table together. That's one of the things I miss most about this quarantine year. How rare it has been to break bread, to share love with one another in our homes or at UUCCI, at restaurants or anywhere we might gather together. That's why, not surprisingly, about, oh gosh, I'm not sure, maybe 7 months ago, we cooked up a little plot. The pot thickens. Pot? Plot? I like pot. It seems tastier. Anyway, some of us cooked up a little plot, a recipe, if you will, to create a new UUCCI cookbook, which little did we know at the time would become a central, meaningful, and tangible activity and outcome during this pandemic. We wanted to find a way to not only bring food into each other's lives, but also to create space to remember or learn for the first time the stories that animate who we are and how we came to be connected to the foods we love. Now, I assure you, this is still about an imprecise recipe for beloved community, so hang in there with me for a second. So this cookbook, which just came hot off the griddle, was delivered to your email inboxes on Friday. Cooking Up Community, we called it, with a nice little subtitle, Recipes and Stories from Our Home to Yours. I hope you had a chance to take a look. And if you haven't, don't worry, it won't go bad. Lots of great natural preservatives, so you should be good. And many of you, I just want to thank you for contributing your recipes and stories, your pictures, your lives, and your love to this cookbook. The first we have had since 1999. Our first, but I dare hope not our last, of this new millennium. And I think when you take a look through it, when you read the stories and think about the many families these recipes have nourished over the years and decades, I think you will begin to see how not just food is essential to the beloved community, but opening our hearts and drawing the circle wide and wider still so that we can gather round the table to feast on the deliciousness of the foods of the earth. That is essential too. It is that sharing of food and love that our community moves closer to a sense of fullness of love, of inclusion, of life. So let's sprinkle in a little bit of that into our recipe o' love, or rather our beloved community. The second ingredient I would glean from our love letter to UUCCI this morning is the essentialness of listening. Now, I know I talk a lot about listening. A little ironic, I talk a lot about listening. But hear me out. Lori, are you picking up these minister jokes? These are some pretty good ones. Listening, and I mean deep, patient listening, is at the heart of the beloved community. For underneath our diverse stories are the meanings of life and death, of joy and sorrow, of trial and triumph, of harm and healing. When we listen beneath the surface of our stories, of our lives together, we are able to recognize a tenderness, a realness, and a shared connections with others, with all that was, is, and might yet still be. Through deep listening and going beneath the surface, not only do our stories take on greater meaning, but our lives and communities do as well. So a recap, we need to tell our stories, listen deeply to them around the table of life, sharing food and nourishment with one another. But there are a couple of other things we need to name this morning in this imprecise recipe for beloved community. Our first reading that Jan shared this morning was written by my friend and colleague, the Reverend Kimberlee Tomczak Carlson, who coincidentally serves the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee, which was where I was dedicated as a baby. I've known Kimberlee since I was probably 14 or 15 years old. She offers some description to the beloved community, for the beloved community, which she calls a place of belonging and caring. There's that darn prefix again. Prefix? Prefix? Not sure. Belong. Belong. Beloved. Beloved. Which, not surprisingly, took me down a rabbit hole to learn about prefixes. Prefixes. So I looked up the origin of the prefix be, and Jiminy Crickets, would you believe what I learned? According to the Google and some highly academic research, the prefix be, be, is derived from Old English, and it was a word-forming element, that's not surprising, that could mean many things, including, get this, thoroughly, completely, about, around, on all sides. Beloved might mean to be loved thoroughly, completely, to be loved about and around and on all sides. Let that soak in for a second. The beloved community might be one in part where love is thoroughly and completely present on all sides. Reverend Kimberlee writes it this way regarding our search for the beloved community, saying we are looking for a people that does not put fences around love. A people that does not put fences around love. What a vision. Instead of putting fences around love, she writes that we long for a community that holds its arms open to the possibilities of love. A beloved community is one where we open our arms to the possibilities of love, the opportunities for love, to not be bound on one side or one part of the community, but shared and enjoyed fully throughout this precious life we have together. Finally, my friends, the beloved community is something we long for. It's something we long to belong to. We long on all sides. We long thoroughly, completely to belong. And that longing is with us, not sometimes, but all the time. As I said, thoroughly, completely. Our longing is with us, named or unnamed, conscious or unconscious, flowing around us on all sides as we strive to make the beloved community real. Before, during, or after the pandemic. Before, during, or after an election. Before, during, or after the deaths of beloved members of our community. That longing and drive to build and belong to the beloved community, as hard and elusive as it may seem, is what brought us here this morning. It wasn't by chance, Reverend Kimberlee writes, it is not by chance that you arrived here today. You have been looking for something larger than yourself. Inside of you, there is a yearning, a calling, a hope for more, a desire for a place of belonging and caring. May that desire, that fire, that longing for love and community never die, but give us courage to move forward with every inhale and every exhale of peace and love, together and together and together. May it be so. And amen.